The gods within Dragon Ball are perhaps the most looked down upon cast of characters for several reasons. They're kinda terrible at their jobs. Beerus prefers to nap, the Supreme Kais fail at basic god training, and the Kaios do jack squat as the Frieza family rules over the vast regions of space while killing off countless alien species. When the gods don't take a page from Gas book and wet themselves, they can act so goated within the series. By working together, they can stop the biggest threats known to the universe, which is exactly what they did to perhaps one of the deadliest menaces across the galaxy. Before the perfection of Cell, the revival of Majin Buu, only one being made the Kaios quiver in fear more than the likes of Frieza. The alcoholic nihilistic horseman. The space pirate galactic warrior Bojack, a villain filled with mysteries regarding his background and power. Only a select few truly know what he's capable of on the battlefield, which then begs the question, how strong is Bojack? Just like with all other movie villains, the most common misconception fans tend to assume is comparing movie scaling to anime scaling. I'm aware it's something I've already brought up for my previous videos, but for any newcomers, it's an aspect of these characters that must be brought up before we can even start figuring out what they can do. Simplifying everything, Toriyama states that the films are in different dimensions, with the guidebook supporting that idea by acknowledging the contradictions between anime events, even placing them in parallel worlds. Takao Koyama, the writer, concedes that the movies contradict the anime continuity, even if that was the basis of his thought process at the time, due to the difficulties of simultaneously broadcasting the anime and films, as well as placing Toriyama's opinion above his own, even if he had little involvement in writing the scripts. While people understand that the movies and anime can be different continuities, different scaling is when it seems to be an issue. The easiest way to explain this is to look at Dragon Ball Super and the popular time traveler Future Trunks himself. In the original story, it's confirmed that the multiverse exists via timelines. Despite Future Trunks' attempt to not cause drastic changes, he acknowledges that time travel results in weird consequences. When he lost to the present androids, Future Trunks notes that they are considerably stronger than the future androids he deals with. This writing concept doesn't change when we reach Dragon Ball Super era. Such as present timeline Zamasu can someone match up to Super Saiyan 2 Goku, but then his future counterpart can throw hands with Super Saiyan Blue Goku. Even if it's due to being a fighting prodigy or having trained, which is unlikely given his character, would nonetheless support the different scaling concept being acceptable. Not to mention the clear difference between manga and anime for Super. An example is Vegito Blue bullying merged Zamasu in the manga, but the anime shows him being rivaled by the fusion god. Overall, since this concept applies to anime and manga, the movies can apply to the same line of thinking. As such, while movie 9 could have similar events play out to that of the anime, that doesn't mean its scaling must likewise be one-to-one by association. For Bojack, I will not be scaling him to the anime and therefore will not compare him to the likes of anime version Perfect Cell or past movie villains like Broly, much to people's disappointment I'm sure. With all that said, Bojack is far from being a pushover. After the Cell game events within this continuity, a new competition, the Intergalactic World Tournament, is created for some idiot kid's birthday or whatever. The Z Fighters decided to participate out of interest to test themselves. Unbeknownst to them, Bojack and the rest of the Hera clan arrive on Earth and interrupt the tournament, taking out every participant one by one. It's not until Future Trunks defeats Gokua, yes that's his official name, that Bojack arrives on the scene. While it's true that Future Trunks is caught off guard, Bojack did 2 feats at the same time. Bojack not only speed blitz Future Trunks, but he also one-shots him despite being in his grade 2 Super Saiyan form, even worse if he was in grade 3. Teen Gohan then arrives on the scene and takes a shot against Bojack's gang. Bojack himself is impressed with Gohan's level of power, but states that even as a full power Super Saiyan, he won't be able to defeat them. This is proven true given that he literally gets jumped on and barely stands a chance. One by one, every other Z fighter would arrive and try their hands against Bojack. Most surprisingly, out of all of them, Piccolo is the only one to land a hit on Bojack. Against Future Trunks, he easily deflects his blast with the barrier. Then as Vegeta appears and fights with little interference, Bojack slowly takes Vegeta down despite also being a grade 2 Super Saiyan. The crazy part is that only then does he access his full power, meaning even if Trunks was not caught off guard initially or weakened by Bojack's crew, Bojack would still have won just as easily as he did against Vegeta. We can somewhat give full power Bojack a multiplier given what happens afterward. You see, despite Gohan's attempt to face Bojack, he speed blitz Gohan and ultimately gets overpowered, nearly dying to the worst bear hug ever. However, thanks to Goku's interference, Bojack gets clobbered in the face and saves his son. With some motivation from his father, Gohan taps into his hidden potential, becoming Super Saiyan 2. Literally one-shotting the entire gang, Bojack was genuinely concerned about the boy's power, going as far as sacrificing Zangya in hopes to catch Gohan by surprise. Despite Bojack's attempt to throw his strongest attack at him, Gohan tanks his blast head on. Even worse is that Gohan pierces through his gut like butter, showing that Bojack's full power and very likely his base form can outclass his grade 4 Super Saiyan, but not his Super Saiyan 2, which would give him a 1.1 through 2 times battle power boost. This is likely the case since Gohan's hidden potential pushes his transformations beyond their normal multiplier. Plus, Bojack did equally clash with his Kamehameha, but ultimately gets the One Punch Man treatment and dies. Now, I'm sure everyone is asking at this point, "Hey Dubs, why have you brought up his feats though?" Well, the truth of the matter is that he barely has any feats outside of what I brought up. All we know is that Bojack scales above his gang members, and the most they've done is destroy several walls, I guess. In terms of destructive capacity, Butoden is shown to cause a massive crater from his blast. Regardless of downplaying or hyping up such a feat would only place him within the city block to doubtfully mountain level, since their battle hardly affects the island the tournament is located at. Sad to say, but because of the lack of feats, Bojack is weak when comparing him to the rest of the movie's rogue gallery. However, Bojack is a prime example of why lore does matter, since it can somewhat clear up the gray area of a character's power. You see, according to King Kai, Bojack was ravaging the universe throughout each quadrant. The Kaios worked together to stop his rampage, and they succeeded by sealing him away to the farthest edge of the universe. However, due to Goku unknowingly breaking the seal due to teleporting Cell at King Kai's world, killing the Kaio and destroying his planet, Bojack was free from his imprisonment. This is where we spiral down to speculation territory. In the English dub, Bojack was sealed away within a star, but the original Japanese dub claims that he was sealed within a planet. For those who watched my Garlic Jr. video, you know where I'm going with this. If you haven't, definitely check it out later. In kanji, Hoshi can mean star or planet, which is why neither dub is technically wrong. However, unlike the mistranslated Makio star, which can be debunked to be Planet Makio due to having visuals, Movie 9 shows no specific imagery. This might explain the misconception that Bojack was specifically sealed within King Kai's planet. The truth of the matter is, it's merely part of the binding force for Bojack's imprisonment. A good comparison is how if Kami dies, so does Piccolo, or if a Supreme Kai dies, so does a God of Destruction. Perhaps King Kai's life force dissipating is what freed Bojack, and not necessarily his Kaio planet being destroyed. Since we do know characters like Zamasu can break out of something like a jar since it didn't have a seal, or Garlic Jr. with a Planet Makio amp can break out of a hyperspace dimension with his key. Perhaps the seal was hacks based and not power based, which prevented Bojack from escaping. Regardless of the vagueness of Bojack's backstory, this can be used to determine his hypothetical max power. You see, every planet and star outputs a certain amount of energy to sustain itself as a singular celestial body. This is known as gravitational binding energy, or GBE. If you can undo the GBE of a planet or star, you essentially have the power to collapse or destroy a celestial body. Now, this is a heavily basic explanation, but this is the common basis for determining fictional characters who are capable of being planetary or star level of attack potency. For those who've seen my previous sets of videos, this is precisely why I make ranges of power for Dragon Ball Z characters, because the difference between fragmenting a planet and completely vaporizing such an object is massive. A good example of what I mean is like comparing the difference between the amount of energy to break a wall into several pieces and the amount of energy when nuking a wall and its surroundings so that no atom remains. In Bojack's case, there are 3 calculations to determine the range of his power. Option 1, we can use Pluto as the bare minimum GBE since despite it being a dwarf planet, it would nonetheless technically fall under the contentious definition of what defines a planet. When using the equation to determine the GBE that holds Pluto together, specifically its mass and radius, we discovered that the amount of energy to undo Pluto's GBE would reach 10 to the 27 joules of energy, essentially requiring around multi-continental level of power to keep Bojack in check. Pretty abysmal, especially for a supposed Z-era villain. But I know all the fans are like, no, he must be stronger than that. Please tell me he's not that weak. Transitioning to the second option, let's assume Bojack was sealed within a big planet like Jupiter. As a reminder, planet Jupiter is about 140,000 times the mass of Pluto and almost 320 times the mass of Earth. Calculating the GBE of Jupiter would mean it took 10 to the 36 or large planet level of energy to contain Bojack. A massive jump compared to option 1, but it is still underwhelming. So to heck with it. Third and final option. Let's assume the 4 Kaios placed Bojack within the most massive known star possible because he was just that strong. Heck, let's assume he was caught off guard. Maybe he was napping and couldn't tap into his full power or something. The current top 3 known massive stars are the R136A1 star, the BAT 99-98 star, and the unconfirmed Westerhout 49-2 star. Very creative names, I'm sure Batman would approve one of them. All 3 stars are over 30 times the radius and over 100 times the mass of our sun. In comparison, the sun is 1,000 times more massive than Jupiter and 100 million times the mass of Pluto. The Westerhout star is unknown since although it's somewhat agreed to be 250 times the mass of our sun, scientists theorize it could be 370 times at max. So even if we redo the calc and base it on the highest hypothetical mass star ever, regardless of whichever is being used and including Bojack's full power 2 times multiplier, the GBE will calc at around 10 to the 44 through 45 joules of energy or large star level to barely reaching solar system level. Any way you slice it, Bojack's power is very questionable given the huge range gap and his contentious lore even when hyped up. Worse is that his speed is unquantifiable. Despite being stated to lay waste across the universe, we don't know how fast and how long Bojack's been going across every 4 quadrants. Sure, maybe you can imply he did travel around through his sheer movement speed, like say with Whis and his staff, or Gas looking for Goku in a Super manga. However, you could speculate he travels via spaceship. Several other movie villains prior are known to rely on technology to get around the universe. Really, all of this is up to you guys to decide, as his lore is very much pure speculation, but just know that when basing it on the GBE calcs, you can at least have something to work with for Bojack's stats. Now, while his movies doesn't give much info on his power, his other secondary appearances give us more interesting takes on his prowess. Before that though, I need to address one misconception, that being his cameo appearance during Fusion Reborn. Again, much like with most movie villains, fans try to heavily rely on Easter egg cameos to justify connecting every movie into one continuity. But much like with Cooler appearing in GT, you cannot prove that Bojack is the same as from movie 9 via association fallacy. Not every Goku throughout the franchise is the same version, and the same applies to Trunks and everyone else, so Bojack would be no different. Also, Bojack appears for a few seconds, so he isn't given any other feats to begin with. Speaking of random cameos, apparently Bojack appears in the 7th film of Dr. Slump fighting Super Saiyan Goku. It is a literal blink and you'll miss it moment. Is this perhaps proof Bojack is hyperversal? No, of course not. It'll make him out of her. Starting with his first gaming appearance as Super Butoden 2, and unlike most games, this one heavily changes Movie 9's story. After this game's continuity of the Cell games, two different plotlines could play out. Much like in Movie 9, Bojack was released from his seal and arrives on Earth. Somehow, it's never explained, but Bojack managed to create fake clones of the Z Fighters to take them out and destroy city populations. The plot changes on whether you successfully defeat the clones or lose to them. If you lose to the clones, we find out that Bojack's plan is using several devices known as Hell Towers that will absorb the energy of the world population. As the Z Fighters locate and takes out these towers, apparently Bojack managed to recruit the Cell Juniors to his side. Either the Cell Juniors regenerated from their defeat since the Cell games, or Bojack somehow also created clones of Cell Juniors. When the heroes take out the towers and find Bojack, if you beat him, the world is saved. If you lose, Bojack nearly kills off the entire cast. However, just as Bojack was about to end the selected character, he senses the key of Broly and runs away out of fear. We find out why he did so in the alternate pathway. If you initially beat the clones, turns out Bojack's plan is to locate the Dragon Balls and hopes to make the legendary Super Saiyan Broly his servant and take over the universe. After collecting all the Dragon Balls before Bojack does, two endings can occur. If you beat him, the world is saved and peace is restored. If you lose, Bojack nearly kills off the selected character you chose, but just before he's about to land the final blow, Broly appears and speed blitz 2 hits Bojack. Turns out a third secret saga focuses on Broly arriving on Earth. Goku appears to confirm that Broly is so strong, not even Bojack's level compares to him, showing that Bojack's prowess is potentially on par with Perfect Cell, but not Broly in this continuity, explaining why he ran away for the bad ending. Following that, the Tenkaichi series mostly recreates the movie story, but the first installment does give Bojack one insane feat. If you lose to Bojack during the movie recreation, then we see that not even Super Saiyan 2 Gohan can beat full power Bojack as a minor what-if scenario. But then there is a second what-if scenario in which all the movie villains come back to life somehow and hunt down each Z fighter. Bojack tracks down Mr. Gohan, and I guess because of training or plot armor, he successfully defeats the supposed stronger Gohan. And video notes, apparently I missed something for my Cooler video, which if you haven't watched it, you can check out later. In the same what-if scenario, out of all the enemies Cooler faces after returning alive, he fights Super Saiyan Gogeta and actually wins. Yes, Cooler defeats a fusion character in this scenario, and I somehow missed this. Sorry about that, but there you go. Game Cooler and Game Bojack are built different, I guess. Speaking of which, its sequel, Tenkaichi 2, also gives Bojack a quick cameo. Recreating the Fusion Reborn events, Bojack comes back from the dead, but this time challenges Gohan along with Videl. Gohan, not believing Videl would not be strong enough to fight alongside him, had to face both Bojack and Zangya on his own and manages to win, albeit with some heavy injury. Which, to be fair, if Bojack ran away from Broly's power, Gohan one-shotting Frieza was probably enough for him to wet himself like gas. Next, occurring within Extreme Butoden, much like with Cooler, Bojack also makes a small cameo. Within an alternate continuity occurring after GT, Omega Shenron returns in distorted space-time, allowing many villains to come back to life. Goku attempts to locate the Dragon Balls, all while finding a way to achieve Super Saiyan God to face Omega Shenron and defeating several enemies while doing so. Bojack comes to assist Frieza in defeating Goku, apparently giving the goon role for whatever reason, perhaps as a nod to his cameo within Fusion Reborn. Either way, despite tag teaming Goku, they end up losing and decide to retreat and look for reinforcement like Bojack's gang. Though we don't get to see them again, so sadly this version of Bojack is vague in terms of power. Speaking of vagueness, I did investigate every game that offers a backstory for Bojack, such as Tenkaichi 3, Raging Blast 2, and Dokkan Battle. Sadly, there doesn't seem to be a consensus, but it's implied that Bojack was likely sealed within a star, but the same could be true of it being a planet. Thankfully, Dragon Ball Legends gives Bojack more screen time. Focusing on the Tournament of Time that takes several characters from different eras, Bojack arrives and causes trouble around the time the Super Cell games is about to take place. Bojack is shown to take out Tien, Yamcha, and Kaba, with grade 4 Super Saiyan Gohan struggling to take him on. The same protagonist Shallot was at the time training in preparation for the Super Cell games and is close to achieving Super Saiyan 2. Not even he could hold his own against base Bojack and believes Teen Gohan was the strongest fighter between the two. Sadly, before they could seriously clash, Ribrian's sorry excuse of a character ruins Bojack's mood to fight and leaves. He returns during the Super Cell games facing off against Kaba and an alternate, stronger, modified Android 16. Even when Goten and Kid Trunks arrive to assist them, Bojack toys with all of them easily. Shallot comes to save them via a surprise attack, but Bojack handles them with little issues. Only when Perfect Cell uses his multi-form technique to assist Bojack does the Saiyan push themselves beyond their limits, but even this was not enough to defeat Bojack. Only thanks to Android 16's self-destruction was Bojack supposedly killed off. By the time this game's version of the Buu Saga events occur, we find out that Bojack survives Android 16's attack, albeit with some injury. Thanks to Kaba's growth since the Super Cell games, both he and a younger future Trunks managed to give Bojack and his crew a harder time. He once again sacrifices Zangya to surprise attack the Saiyans and eventually go to full power. Kaba in response achieves Super Saiyan 2 and manages to outmatch Bojack. However, he obtains a Dark Ki power-up. As such, he manages to overpower both Saiyans as Kaba has yet to master his form. Just when Bojack was about to win, adult Super Saiyan 2 Gohan, coming from pre-Buu Saga era, arrives to assist them, and as such, they manage to work together and kill him off for good. Overall, showing that Bojack's peak within Legends would place him on a similar level to late Cell Games era to pre-Majin Buu era. Though as I brought up within my cooler video, since this game specifically relies on its own scaling and not inherently manga, anime, or movie scaling, there tend to be some inconsistencies regarding certain characters' abilities. The best example is how Kaba in the anime is fully capable of rivaling against post-God training base Vegeta, who is clearly shown after the Universe 6 tournament saga to outclass even Super Saiyan 3 Gotenks. But in Legends, Kaba can handle Cell Games era characters. So take Legends canonicity and scaling consistency with a grain of salt. Speaking of inconsistencies, Legends version Kaba would be shocked by Bojack's appearance within Super Dragon Ball Heroes World Mission. Again, occurring within its own continuity, it focuses on a team of Heroes players helping out Xeno Trunks and Chronoa, the Supreme Kai of Time, and fixing time distortions. Very late into the game, Champa arrives abruptly and challenges the heroes via a tournament. Due to time distortions, Champa recruits not just the original Universe 6 team, but also alternate Universe 6 fighters like Bio Broly, Paragus, Mr. Satan of all people, and naturally Bojack himself. Meaning that lore-wise, low-key, Bojack could be one of the strongest known fighters Champa has specifically chosen to represent Universe 6, much like within the anime or manga of Dragon Ball Super. By the way, this might also include Zangya since she appears gameplay-wise. Either way, Bojack and his team lose, but it's surprisingly chill about his defeat, likely due to the time distortion also affecting his personality. During a side mission, just like with Garlic Jr., Bojack appears to aid Babidi in defeating the Supreme Kais and achieving his King of Destruction form, breaking his limits due to manipulation sorcery according to the guidebooks and therefore becoming stronger. Or perhaps rivaling his full power state, since we don't see him combine both forms, which would be very underwhelming. Despite this power-up, Bojack loses to the Kais in the end. And this was just the beginning of Heroes version Bojack. Within Ultimate Mission X, there is a side mission where the player avatar along with future Trunks and Xeno Gohan face off against the Galaxy Warriors. Surprisingly, Bojack on his own was able to make Xeno Gohan use up too much energy and gets wounded before the rest of the Hera clan arrives for the final battle. Eventually, the team managed to defeat Bojack and the Galaxy Fighters. So it's not 100% proof this Bojack is as strong as the Xeno counterparts, but just know that Bojack wounding Xeno Gohan will be important in a bit. Before we finish off with Super Dragon Ball Heroes, Xenoverse 2 gives Bojack a bit more of the spotlight. He appears only as a selectable master the player's avatar can choose. If so, he can appear in post-game content during the Infinite History saga. The most important thing to take note of is that he was able to face and defeat Super Era characters with little issues. The strongest opponent for him is the Migra. As a reminder, this demon god is an arch nemesis for Chronoa, the overseer of an infinite 4D construct, the Time Nest. This is consistently stated by the NPC time patrollers, and even the most annoying bird ever, Toki Toki, is literally stated to control all of space-time itself. The Migra absorbs this very power, and even without it, is stated by promotional materials to be a threat that goes beyond time and space. In contrast, when Deborah summons extra help for the final fight, he chooses Frieza as his partner to fight against Cooler if he was your selected master. Yet the default partner is normally Demigra, and Bojack is given no unique boss equivalent. The fact he at all defeats this demon god along with an empowered Deborah means that Xenoverse Bojack would indeed reach at least infinite 4D powers, likely higher since Bojack coincidentally never goes full power. Finally, circling back to Super Dragon Ball Heroes, we reach Bojack's peak level of scaling. Appearing during the prison planet arc, we find Bojack trying to find the Dragon Balls to escape the prison planet. In the manga, he tries to kill off future Trunks but gets shot by Cooler via a surprise beam attack, which is kinda lame. He sorta does and doesn't return as a Ghost Warrior due to the Deathstrong gas, but just like last time, he gets one shot again by Golden Cooler. Thankfully, he somewhat redeems himself during the universe creation arc. For the anime version, Bojack was saved from his timeline and recruited by a demon scientist, Few, and was legit acting racist, trying to kill off Turles for being a Saiyan. Just as their fight was about to get intense, Few stops their banter. But then he appears once again and face off against Capsule Corp Goku and Vegeta. Within the manga version, he legit tangles with Super Saiyan God Vegeta despite not able to sense their God Ki. It gets expanded upon with any anime where Vegeta notes Bojack has been training since his death, but was also given an Evil Aura power-up thanks to Few. Yeah, that's what it's called, Evil Aura. Great name. As such, Bojack skyrockets to the level of Super Saiyan Blue Vegeta. As a reminder, Capsule Corp Vegeta would rival Blue Goku, who can rival Xeno Super Saiyan 4 Goku. The same Xeno Goku who can defeat monster form Demigra and later relatively clash against his Transcendent state. As dumb as it sounds, it is confirmed that Transcendent Demigra can destroy the real world. Even the promotional trailers for Dragon Ball Heroes literally show Japan being attacked by evil forces, meaning the Heroes franchise does indeed recognize the real world as a dimension separate from the entire Dragon Ball verse. Not to mention that Xeno Goku can scale to the likes of Chronoa's speed, whereas in the manga she saves Xeno Trunks from an entirely separate flow of time with no implication of time hacks being used to do so. So the fact Bojack can rival the Heroes counterparts would at least give him infinite speed downplayed. Sadly, once again his battle ends abruptly as Bojack escapes via a portal, though few in the manga confirmed that they would have lost to their blue form eventually. He does return within the manga where Bojack is finally given a chance to fight Gohan. Bojack completely thrashes Heroes version Gohan, supposedly after the Tournament of Power within this continuity. Bojack was so upset about Gohan's lack of growth, he straight up threatens him to go all out or he'll kill his alternate daughter, Xenopan, in which Gohan becomes so enraged and taps into his hidden potential, and despite using his full power along with his training growth, Gohan for the last time one-shots Bojack. But hey, at least he got some character development and accepted his defeat and respected Gohan. Bojack does appear very briefly within the Super Space Time tournament, though sadly all we see is Vegeta supposedly defeating him off screen. And yeah, that is all for Bojack's list of feats. To summarize everything, movie version Bojack is unfortunately lacking in feats. The most you can say is that he's at least city block to questionably mountain level based on the blast crater his gang caused. When you do include his lore, the most you can say is that he is at the bare minimum interpretation to be multi-continental level when questioning the particular size of the planet that held Bojack. Even when hyped up and giving him the benefit of the doubt, he doesn't go past solar system level, essentially sticking him within the star ranges of power, if assuming Bojack was indeed sealed within a star. The same goes for his speed since we have little to work with. The only headcanon being that if he did travel across space on his own, which given how insane the size our universe is, let alone Dragon Ball's version of it, you can at least say he'd be at least speed of light. Obviously, traveling through a solar system distance, let alone galaxies, would require beyond light speed to be considered a serious threat for the Kaios to intervene. Though again, I'll repeat for those who misunderstand, it's very much pure speculation and cannot be proven due to lack of evidence. For his game scaling, Bojack's placement doesn't change by much since most of his appearances place his movie recreations after of the cell games within each specific continuity. As such, even as a composite character or a specific version, Bojack in base and full power would reach around perfect cell level to super perfect cell level when hyped up. Though Tenkaichi 1 would be the only outlier since he jumps all the way to Mr. Gohan level apparently. As for Xenoverse and hero scaling, since we know for sure he can scale above the likes of Demigra and potentially on par with Heroes version Super Goku and Vegeta, albeit with some external evil aura amps, he can still at least reach multiversal plus level in power. Consistently, he won't scale as high as say Gold and Meta Cooler, but even so, he would reach within the single digits of dimensional scaling. Hyped up, of course, he could peak to 12th dimensional, but obviously dimensional scaling for Heroes and Xenoverse is contentious. As for speed, since he did outclass Demigra, who can even give Chrono a lot of difficulties, would still nicely place him from massively FTL plus downplayed to infinite speeds consistently. Though of course he would more accurately be immeasurable speed based on all the feats of traveling through time through their sheer speed. But you can say this is highballed if you think it's too over the top. For hero standards, he wouldn't be a top tier level character, but at least be relevant enough within the mid tier level of hero scaling. We'll just have to wait and hope for the best until we get more material to work with concerning his power. I mean, who knows? Perhaps he can indeed become canon within Super given the weird relation between Bojack and the Universe 6 residents like with Legends in the World mission. Or maybe his cameo within Dr. Slump is proof he's out of verse. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I seriously tried my best to work with what I got, but hey, sometimes lore is just as nonsensical as power scaling in fiction. Thankfully, no other character with such ridiculous lore exists within the series. Am I right, guys? I'd like to give a quick shout out to the boy Corredor. He's the guy who translated all of the dialogue from Super Butoden 2 and Ultimate Mission X, and it very much helped a lot for the video process. So please check out his Fivver account if you ever need any help when it comes to Japanese translations, because he knows what he's doing. And this video would have been much more bare bone had it not been for his assist. Shout outs to that guy because he is indeed a goat for allowing us to know what the heck is even being said in those games to allow the internet to consume. Anyways, that's all I got for today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.